Well, I think we will get started. The Q&A is open. We will be looking at the Q&A for questions. However, I do want everyone to know we've already collected a number of questions from people before the event, and we also collected some questions from the leadership of the Westside Family Democratic Club. We will try to get through as many questions as possible. I am confident that we're going to have a really, really informative and interesting conversation. So thank you everyone for coming. Thank you so much to our guest, Supervisor Myrna Melgar, and her Democratic challenger, Matt Boschetto. Let me briefly run through the format. In a minute, each candidate will introduce themselves. Supervisor Melgar, as the incumbent, will start. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves. Then we will go through a question and answer period. Because Supervisor Melgar will be the first one to introduce herself. Mr. Boschetto will be the first one to receive a question, to answer a question, but each question will be answered by both people. And we will go back and forth between who answers the question first. So both people answer each question. We're just going back and forth. We're alternating who answers first to try to make it as evenly distributed as possible. If in the response to a question, one of the people specifically names or specifically references or, heaven forbid, attacks the other person's record or policies, then the other person will get roughly 30 seconds to respond. We'll do the best I'll do the best I can to keep time. I can't promise I'll get it precise. We don't have buzzers here, but we're going to do the best we can to keep the thing rolling. Only one rebuttal per question because we want to keep the thing moving. And then we'll just go through a set of questions that we have from the club leadership, and then a set of questions that we've collected from members ahead of the event. And then we will be looking through the Q&A. And if a question rises through that and we have time, we'll ask that question as well. We have well over 30 people in the audience. There's a lot of interest here. Let's get to it. Again, thank you both so much for coming. Supervisor Melgar, please kick us off and tell us about yourself and why we should be electing you.
Thank you so much, Patrick. And also thank you to the Westside Family Democratic Club. I'm so glad that we have this club and that here on the Westside, we're discussing the issues that families care about. So I am your supervisor for District 7, Myrna Melgar, and I am running for re-election because I love my job and I want to keep doing it for another 4 years. Prior to my election in 2020, I was the executive director for the Jamestown Community Center, which is a agency in the Mission that serves low-income, at-risk youth and families in the Mission, Excelsior, and Bayview. I was also the president of the City Planning Commission, and before that, the vice president of the Building Inspection Commission. I have been in public service my entire life. I'm an urban planner by training and have specialized skills in economic development and housing development. Since I've been on the board, I have focused on issues that support families in our public schools in the city, childcare and early education, housing and transportation, and I've also served on a couple of regional boards, the Bay Area Air Quality Management Agency and the Golden Gate Transportation Authority. I have been successful in passing legislation. I have not introduced anything that has failed because I work really hard to come to consensus with my colleagues. And that's important right now because we're in such a polarized environment in our country and our city. Some of the legislative achievements I have done are free MUNI for youth, our graffiti abatement program, the Love Your Neighbors legislation, the successful development agreement for the Stonestown Mall and the Balboa Reservoir. And I will continue to support all of these issues. I, along with my colleague supervisor, Joel Engardio, passed the Family Housing Opportunity Act that allows more choices for single-family homeowners on the West Side. And I have a proposition on the ballot dealing with children's funding.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. All right, Matt, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Boschetto. I'm a fourth generation San Franciscan, a small business owner and a husband and father of three. Running for political office was never in my political trajectory, or even on my bucket list. I was encouraged to do so by residents of District 7, lifelong residents, community leaders who felt that our district wasn't being represented adequately at City Hall and within the district itself. My family's lived in District 7 now close to 100 years. My kids are the fifth generation to live in this district. We have a small business. We have our home here. And with that encouragement, I just simply felt, I felt we had too much on the sidelines. I felt obligated to step up with the encouragement and with the support up front. And, you know, when you love something, you fight for it. And I was told, you know, in a machine town, an establishment town where people have been in City Hall for 20 years and then walk into the seat of supervisor, that I'd be nowhere in the running for this. But here I am speaking to you. We have a very viable campaign. We've maxed out our matching funds. We're continuing to do well, pick up momentum, pick up great endorsements. And I hope to just really be the best leader District 7 has seen for a very long time. A lot of people ask, you know, that's the why. A lot of people ask the how. You've never been in city government. You've never been in City Hall. Well, I don't think the people in City Hall who've been there for decades have really served us well. And small business owners, I think, are particularly set up to address the issues that the city's facing right now. You know, we're very sensitive to all the different policy failures, from lack of public safety to the street conditions, to lack of affordability, to excessive planning processes, to excessive taxes, you know, and how all these issues layered on one another can squeeze good people out and stop good people from coming in. So I think people, you know, like myself, who are small business owners who come from the community, are really want to be community voices and have a ton of accountability, have to balance their budget, have to take care of employees, would be able to just really come into the seat with a lot of resolve and delivers on the issues that the city needs us to see and District 7 residents would like us to address.
Thank you very much. And thank you very much for almost hitting it right on the nose. Okay, Matt, you will answer this question first. And the first question is, please describe your general philosophy and specific policy positions around public safety. You may address anything about policing that you want in your answer. Go ahead.
Yeah, my philosophy around public safety is one that we really need to support the police and all law enforcement. I mean, these are people who are providing us one of our most basic services. And unfortunately, you know, with the decriminalization and de-incarceration movement, it's sort of been capstoned with the criminalization of the police and law enforcement themselves. You know, a lot of our current leaders, including Supervisor Melgar, did call for their disbanding and their rehiring at the height of this movement in 2020. I never agreed with that. I've always been supportive of the police, just with the fact that most of them are good people trying to help our city. So, you know, really fundamentally, we need to change how we view the police. We need to change how we view, you know, them themselves. Can there be reform? Can there be progress within the system? Yes, but ultimately, we need to work with the system that I think works, that has a lot of good people in it, risking their lives every day to take care of us. So, you know, when you're looking at public safety, I really believe providing them all resources they need. It's not just about staffing. It's about force multipliers. It's about reducing red tape. It's about reducing liability for the job. And just making sure that they have everything they need to fulfill their mandate, taking resources away from them, morally, you know, making them morally downtrodden is just not a way to bolster the force and then have more people join in who'd want to be a cop in 2020. I definitely wouldn't have. So luckily, I think we are turning the page on that, and I'm a huge supporter. And again, just never supported anything that was around disbanding. Thank you.
Okay, terrific. So, Matt, your answer was about 90 seconds, which is great. We're going to try to hew to that. Supervisor Melgar, you were name checked, so you're going to get an extra 30 seconds. Again, please describe your general philosophy, specific policy positions around public safety. Go ahead. Anything you want about policing, you may or may not include. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Patrick. Public safety in a city that is an international destination like San Francisco is multifaceted. So it includes the police. It also includes fire. It includes 911 operators. It includes our public health department. It includes the community and how the community feels about the departments that are there to keep the community safe. It also has a lot to do with the culture and what is going on around, neighborhoods. So, for example, during the pandemic, we had a president that specifically attacked our Asian community and blamed them for the pandemic, and that affected the feelings of safety of the community. I think San Francisco deserves a 21st century police department, one that is that has capacity to deal with languages from all over the world, which is what exists in San Francisco, and one that has modern equipment. We are right in the middle of Silicon Valley, and our use of electronic tools has traditionally been fairly poor. I think that we are behind other municipalities. I also think that our police department and our other safety departments like fire and 911 need to represent the communities that they are tasked with keeping safe, because that is a lot of what trust means. That's how trust is built. So that means gender equity, that it reflects LGBTQ communities, that it reflects language capacity. All of these things make a strong police department. I think that I will address the name check at
You've
specifically.
only got a few seconds.
And that is that, we undertook a police reform effort, and that was mandated by the Department of Justice. And I am very proud that we have been
I
able
apologize for cutting you off. You
It's
have
okay,
over 2
Patrick.
minutes.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so Supervisor Melgar, it's now your turn to answer first. Very different question, although of course everything is related, right? So San Francisco is facing severe budget pressures. Per capita spending by City Hall has increased substantially in real terms over the last decade. In other words, per resident of San Francisco, after inflation, spending has increased substantially over the last decade. Please explain briefly why you think that's the case and how you believe we should rein in the growth in spending going forward. Go ahead.
Thank you, Patrick. The big increases in the general fund portion of our budget have been due mostly to labor costs. Living in San Francisco is really expensive, and in order to recruit firefighters, police officers, nurses, we have to pay salaries that are enough to put up with all of the things that happen in our city. And that has by far been the greatest driver of the increases. That being said, San Francisco has always been a well-resourced city. And so while we have money, I think that there has been a lack of discipline. We've always been able to put together a new commission or put together a new special assistant position. I think that the efficiency of government can really be enforced in this next administration. I think that we owe it to the citizens of San Francisco to be more efficient in the way we operationalize the things that we want to do together.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Matt, same question to you. Again, just to remind you, real per resident spending has increased substantially over the last decade. Why do you believe that's the case? What should be done to rein in the growth going forward? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, of course, it might be labor would be one of the top line items. I mean, it is for most organizations, I would say, but I mean, that doesn't mean that you have a huge bloated budget. We've spent way too much on certain things, and departments are running extremely inefficiently. So I do think, we have to look at all the increases over the last 10 years and ask whether they've been necessary. Have they actually resulted in better basic services? Have they resulted in better city management? Has it resulted for better outcomes for San Franciscans? And it's clear that it hasn't. It simply hasn't. Something that wasn't mentioned was the $1.6 million in grants that the city doles out, to many organizations that really don't use this money well. So you know, I don't think efficiency was ever a principle of city government. I think, you know, our leaders were just focused on nice to haves rather than need to haves, you know, and just really gearing our budget towards serving San Franciscans. So, you know, really when I look at the budget, I'm looking at massive place of inefficiencies, right? I'm looking at the $1.6 billion in grants. I'm looking at the increases over the budgets. You know, some of these have increased over 400%, even when including inflation. And it's pretty spectacular to see. And so I think we really need to put these things under the microscope. We really need to ask again if they actually deliver better results for San Franciscans. And when they don't, we need to cut or spend more efficiently. That's for sure.
Terrific. Okay, thank you very much. And since Supervisor Melgar was the first person to respond to the last question, you're the first person to respond to this one. Please speak to the controversy around the proposed West Portal redesign in response to the tragic accident that happened a few months ago and the ultimate agreed upon plan. Go ahead.
Yeah, of course. You know, I really wish we could put the family's name to rest. It's just so sad we're bringing it up at this point. You know, those plans had been proposed many years before, since 2019. Certainly the tragedy was you know, brought up these plans again, the desire for these plans again, but to say that these plans, you know, could have stopped the tragedy or could avoid a tragedy like that in the future is just patently false. And I just think we need to be honest to the community about why we're doing this. You know, if these changes were brought up again, you know, whether it was for a horrible tragedy or not, I would have just started with the community process right away. I would have took the people who had the interest in seeing the changes and said, look, let's go talk to the merchants. Let's go talk to the neighbors right away. Ultimately, I think that would have been a more painful process, a longer process, but I think we would have ended up in the same results. I don't think there would have been so much vitriol spit around, so much conflict that you see. And now these are a really sore spot. You know, changes like this are a really sore spot across the district. So I am not against the compromise that came out of it, because it is a compromise. But you know, I think that's it's a mistake to ever think that you're going to do anything in District 7 without having some sort of compromise and reaching some sort of consensus with neighbors. And that doesn't mean you have hard conversations, but I do think it's just about being a leader who leads from the front, who has those conversations up first, who goes through the messy process of democracy, and trusts that ultimately it creates better results for the district.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much. Supervisor Melgar, same question for you.
Can you repeat the question again,
Absolutely,
please, Patrick?
absolutely. So please speak to the controversy around the proposed West Portal redesign in response to the tragic accident that happened a few months ago, and the ultimate agreed upon plan.
So the question you ask is...
I'm simply asking you to speak to it.
No, I'm
Yeah.
answering it. It's to speak to the controversy. And, you know, the controversy is about land use. It is about how we use that intersection and what priorities we should have, whether it is safety, or we prioritize, you know, having some risk, but making it easier for folks to get around in a particular way, which is cars going through the intersection. And so I think that at the end, it was messy. I agree with Mr. Boschetto. There were a lot of feelings and a lot of strong opinions. I'm very proud of the process that we created because it wasn't the MTA that was leading the conversation, nor me in my office. The point was for people to talk to each other and to come up with something that they could all live with, that could be implemented with the least resistance and acceptance from the community. And I think we achieved that. We even added a couple of parking spaces, and I think the intersection will definitely be safer.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much. Okay, so now it's your turn, Supervisor Melgar, to respond first. Question is, the other West Side, quote unquote, supervisor race is the one in the Richmond, which is District 1. Which candidate do you support in that race and why?
I am supporting Connie Chan in that race because she is my colleague. I have worked with Connie for the past 4 years. We don't agree on a lot of things. In fact, she is on the other side of, the Great Highway Park issue that we have. But I do know that she has a lot of support among people that I have relationships with in the Richmond. And she means something to a lot of the community. I will work with anyone who wins that seat. I pride myself on being able to have relationships with folks across the political spectrum, but because she is my colleague now, I'm supporting her.
Okay, terrific. Matt, same question to you.
Yeah, look, I've agreed with Connie on things too. I agree with her about the Great Highway. We're on the same side of that. We're politically probably opposite, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to have agreement or disagreement. I'm not going to have agreement with people who are on the other side of the aisle. Saying that, I support Marjan 100%, because Marjan will be an agent for change. Connie Chan, like Supervisor Melgar, has had 4 years to lead. And, say for maybe an election year, we really haven't had good results. And I think it's just really a time for change. Marjan, I see as that agent of change. She's addressing the issues that San Franciscans want to see up front, and we're going to be able to hold her accountable to that. And so I massively support Marjan. I really respect how many times she's ran to get this seat, and I really hope she gets it this time. And I hope she stays true to her word and delivers on the issues that District 1 and the rest, the West Side, wants to see fixed.
Okay, terrific. And Supervisor Melgar, you were mentioned, and also your response was relatively short. So if you want to say anything, you've got 30 seconds.
No, I don't feel like I need anything else to say. Thank you, Patrick.
Okay, terrific. Hang on a second. I need to, there we go. I just have to make my stopwatch work correctly. Okay, Matt, it's your turn to answer first. And this is a question about housing. Each of you describes a pro-housing and pro-development agenda for District 7, but your specific proposals and your perspectives are actually differ quite a lot. Make the case that your agenda is the best one, both in terms of your goals and your means to achieve those goals. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that one. I think our policies around housing do differ, while we are both pro-housing candidates. Look, housing in San Francisco has been over-politicized for decades now. It was decades on the side of the community process. There was just, everything was being held up by the community process. And now it's gone 180 degrees of insanity to where it's just 100% of we're politicizing the planning process. And I've never been, in either camps. I am a down the middle person when it comes to this. I truly believe we can build housing, and especially District 7, without tearing up our neighborhoods, without causing big community fights. There are a lot of places in San Francisco where the highest and best uses aren't being fulfilled, and it's probably housing. So we need to look at, I am more concerned than upzoning the whole West Side, which I think has led to a ton of conflict, has really not helped and made progress on the issues. I'm wholly looking at the economic factors. And when I say the economic factors, I mean what we can control as a city government, and that's the planning process. That's the planning process, the DR, the discretionary review reform, making sure that developers don't have 10% soft costs with the city. That's just blowing out pro formas. If we as a city can reduce that soft cost by 5%, you will see a lot more breaking ground. You don't see breaking ground with a planning map. You upzone for 200,000 units. Well, if your planning process is still encumbering as heck, those units won't get built. Simple.
Okay, sorry, I have to stop you there. I'm sorry. You're obviously very passionate about it, and you've gone over a minute and a half, but thank you very much. Great answer. Okay, or great passion. So, Supervisor Melgar, same question. I'll repeat it just so you remember. Each of you describes a pro-housing and pro-development agenda for District 7, but your specific proposal and perspectives differ substantially. Make the case that your agenda is the best one in terms of your goals and your means to achieve those goals. Go ahead.
Thank you, Patrick. I will start by disagreeing that Mr. Boschetto's agenda is pro-housing. I will also say that in the remarks that I've heard Mr. Boschetto say about housing, he supports the housing only that I've already worked to get through entitled and not much else. And so I think that the Westside, because of the housing element that I led in passing at the board, is committed to building significantly more housing at all levels of the income spectrum. We need a supervisor who actually understands the development process, who has the skills to negotiate a development agreement of the complexity of, for example, Stonestone, a infrastructure financing agreement of the complexity that we need, say, for Park Merced. And to be able to fix something, you need to understand it first. And I have spent many years not only leading this, but also doing the work as the chair of the Land Use and Transportation Committee. I think that when I say that we should be doing something, it is actually backed up by real skills and experience.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And Matt, you were name checked there. So if you want, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. You know, when I'm saying I'm pro-housing, I'm not just pro-housing in District 7. I mean, I think in District 7, you have to be nuanced because it's very politically sensitive, but I'd be pro-housing across the city as well. You know, I don't think Mrs. Melgar has been pro-housing across the city. When you look at the 500 Stevenson project, Nordstrom's parking lot project, that was one that would have been great, a ton of units of housing for the city, but, you know, she went the other way due to the whims of Todco. So when I say I'm going to produce housing, I really am, and I'm going to produce it throughout the city. And of course, you know, yeah, 10,000 units.
Okay,
Sorry.
apologize. It's 30 seconds, and we're a winner. We have our first double name check. So Supervisor Melgar, you have 30 seconds. If you want, go ahead.
It is obvious that Mr. Boschetto has never read the housing element. The two projects that you are talking about are in the equity areas in the housing element. That project on Stevenson prompted a lawsuit against the city, which we won. And the folks who brought the lawsuit actually ended up having to pay for the city's legal costs because the decision was made on the CEQA document. And on that, we were right by law.
Okay, terrific. I'm going to have to stop you there. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, great. Okay, so Supervisor Melgar, you now respond first. Very different, well, different question, but in a sense related. Please speak to the situation regarding the many RVs with otherwise unhoused people living in them around Merced Park and other areas in District 7. What should the city do? And what should the District 7 supervisor do? Go ahead.
Thank you for the question. This has been one of the most complicated things that I've worked on over the past 4 years. There are two things that we do, and we must do them concurrently. One is that we need to be able to offer a safe parking site for folks who need a little bit more time to get into permanent housing. But the other thing that we must do is enforce our parking regulations, because if we don't do that concurrently, we will never be able to support folks to get out of living in the public right of way, which should be used for many other things, but not for housing.
Okay, terrific. Mr. Boschetto, same question to you around the RVs and around District 7.
Yeah, actually, we have a rare point of agreement with that last piece. You know, we can't be having a revolving door. So I think we need to have an enforcement plan in process for the street, and that we need to find a place for them to go. We need to have the compassionate infrastructure for us to take, you know, the biggest case being the families with children off the street and into compassionate care and permanent housing options. You know, I still just wonder why it's been so long. You know, I know we looked at grants past, but, you know, you have children in these RVs. If they were on tents, it would be solved, you know, within a day. But the fact that they're on RVs, it sort of bends the rules. And for me, I think we really need to, you know, really sort out who's there. We need to offer them compassionate service. But if they don't accept it because they're not ready or something like that, they at that point are voluntarily homeless. You know, at that point, they're choosing their RV over the compassionate solutions and services we're offering them. And so it's a really sort of hard thing, and it's a tightrope you gotta walk. But, you know, I feel like we could have had this thought about a long time ago. Just because grants pass change, all of a sudden we have to move everybody around. It's not been very effective because we haven't fixed the bottlenecks in our homeless services, in our shelter system. So, you know, I do think I do agree that we can get to a full scenario now, but you know, a lot of it could have been done before. We could have had the infrastructure ready. So, you know, a lot of the movings, whether it's the RVs or tents, just would be a lot more effective across the city, and not just pushing people around and leaving them in unsustainable situations, especially kids.
Terrific. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so now we're going to go to some of the questions that were submitted by some of the attendees, or hopefully they're here. Matt, you're the first one to respond this time. School board recalls, were they a good thing? And I do want to mention, you can choose to pick this up if you want, but it would count as a name check. But I'm going to throw it out there because it was part of the question that was submitted, because the person did specifically say, Supervisor Melgar, you told the Harvey Milk Club I would only support a recall if there's malfeasance by the office holder, while you told Grow SF that you did not take a position on the recall of the school board members. So I put that out there as context. It's entirely up to you, Matt, whether you want to take that up. It was submitted by the questioner, but the real question is, school board recalls, were they a good thing?
Yeah, you know, I'm sure as an elected official, you're scared of recalls, but as a member of the community, I think they've been a very good thing for San Francisco. You know, the school board at the time during the pandemic was derelict of duty. You know, that their main goal and still main goal should be learning outcomes. And, you know, during a time when we really needed to work hard to find solutions to create those learning outcomes, they were totally mixed up in ideology and still going down things that really didn't help our kids at all, especially during that time. So I think for them, it was absolutely warranted. And I would never take away the public and the community's ability to answer one of their elected officials. If a recall is the tool, let them use it. You know, I know a lot of established politicians, professional politicians, don't like people going after their colleagues, but you know, I'm a true Democrat, and I love the fact that our community has that resource if they feel their voice is unheard.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much. Supervisor Melgar, same question to you.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you for the question. You know, I am a refugee from a war. My family came to San Francisco from El Salvador when I was 12, and we came because there was an assassination attempt on my dad. We left everything, and within 2 weeks we were here. Governmental stability is really important to me, and it is important to democracy. I did not support the many recalls that happened that year. Remember, it was the governor, it was the district attorney, it was the school board members. That being said, I did not support their campaigns either. The district attorney had a Stand with CHESA campaign, the school board members did as well, and I did not support those because, like Mr. Boschetto, I agree that, you know, the voters have the right to do that. However, I think there's a cost to it. There is a cost to the stability of the system. Mr. Boudin was never my candidate. I supported Susie Loftus, but nevertheless, I think that there is a valuable thing when you have a crisis like a pandemic, to have folks who understand what they're doing to keep doing it. Now, the school board recall was a little bit different in that their terms were up less than 6 months after the recall. I think the kids were already back. They were charged with hiring a superintendent. The things that we were trying to fix have not quite been fixed yet. I support the board members that are there now,
Okay.
but I think they'll have a long way to go.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. Supervisor Melgar, this question will go to you first and then over to Matt. This is about MUNI. MUNI is facing a severe funding shortfall of up to $240 million a year for operating trains and buses starting in 2026 when federal bridge funding for transit runs out. What should San Francisco do to address this funding shortfall to ensure that MUNI service continues to operate What would you do as supervisor to help the city resolve this funding crisis?
Thank you. The first thing that we should do is pass Proposition L, which is a proposition on the November ballot that frees up some money for operations. It taxes Uber and Lyft to be able to fund some of the deficit in MUNI. But farther than that, I think that we need to explore all income generating schemes for MUNI. This MUNI owns a lot of land that can be developed and generate rents and other income sources. If you are in San Francisco, you have no doubt seen people with a MUNI logo on their t-shirts, on their jewelry, on their hats. MUNI gets none of that. So for starters, we should be able to monetize the swag that's out there to generate some income for MUNI. And lastly, I do think that we should look at the fare structure. I think that folks who can afford to pay should pay, and we should be able to also coordinate with other transit agencies around the Bay Area to come up with a plan that all of us together can get back to solvency. That includes BART and Caltrain.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much. Matt, same question to you about the funding shortfall of MUNI. What should San Francisco do to address that shortfall? What would you do as supervisor to help the city resolve the funding crisis?
Yeah, when you look at MUNI, I mean, these are one of these departments that should be sort of income generating, right? They do have some fundings, coming towards them, and they've been just very inefficient in their operations. There's a lot of reasons why they're in need of money, and I don't think it's fair, on Prop L. I think Prop L is a horrible idea. To not look at the root causes as to why MUNI's so inefficient with funds, and to then go to private business and tax private business further so we can subsidize our MUNI. I mean, that's just the last thing San Francisco needs, especially when you look at autonomous vehicles. They could actually provide very, very cheap transit for a lot of San Franciscans, especially those with ADA issues, accessibility issues, the elderly. A lot of families currently use it already. And as the cost of capital of that goes down, the use case in San Francisco is going to increase great. It's a great supplement to have alongside better transit, connected bike lanes, buses. So, trying to hamper them and stop them from creating a benefit, I think would be good for the city. I think it's just the wrong direction for the city to go in. I think we need to look at MUNI and ask why is it so unbalanced? And we need to get it balanced. We need to get the budget balanced. We need to make sure the funding's there, across the city. That's why financial accountability is so important, not asking public businesses to subsidize more of our problems.
Terrific. Okay. Thank you very much, Matt. And then Matt, you now are the first person to get the next question. And this is more of a sort of a process or maybe sort of personal philosophy question. How do you plan to engage with constituents and get feedback from the community on new proposals? And how should we expect to be able to discuss issues with you?
Yeah, thank you. I really want to be an open book. I want to be extremely approachable as a supervisor. If, I want to be answering my email all the time. I want to be dealing with community issues all the time. I want my only bosses to be my constituents, so all my inspiration for my policy will come from the community. So I will be listening. I will be having those conversations. And I know that's a ton of work. But I'd rather not be a city hall leader. I'd rather be a district leader. I'd rather be really available to you. So I think just going through that very hard process, listening to the constituents, understanding what they want from both sides. You're going to hear conflicting interest. I get that. And it's just, how do you balance and then lead forward on these conversations on housing, on transit, on public safety, on RVs and homelessness. And so my style of leading is going to be one that's up from the front. As I said earlier about West Portal, be having those hard conversations up front and not, waiting to the end. And I ultimately think that'll be result in a lot more, less conflict, a lot more agreeableness, and better results at the end of the day.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much, Matt. Supervisor Melgar, and obviously, since you are the incumbent supervisor, of course, you feel free to answer this in terms of how you have been engaging with constituents and getting feedback, but it's really sort of a process and sort of philosophy question for you. Go ahead.
Thank you so much, Patrick. I think systems are important. We at the District 7 office have monthly office hours. We go back and forth between doing them virtually and now doing them in person. Thank goodness we can do that now. But we also engage regularly with groups and constituents that we have a special focus policy area work that is pending. So for example, with the schools funding, measure that is on the ballot in November, I've been working for 2 years with the early education community, with the Parents Coalition, with Coleman Advocates, with the folks who are working with children. We in San Francisco are so lucky that we have so many interested people who are engaged and knowledgeable and have spent, a lot of time doing things to advance progress on children's issues, on housing, on any number of things. So I pride myself of having really good relationships with folks who are doing work that I'm interested in. And in addition to that, we get a lot around the District 7. It is the largest district geographically. I think I have the best staff at City Hall, and we get out there regularly, check in with folks, and make sure that their needs and problems are addressed and represented at City Hall.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Supervisor Melgar. And I have another question. Well, it's your turn to be the first one to answer this question. And I just want the audience to know that we are looking at the questions in the Q&A, and one of the things I'm doing is I go through the questions that were submitted ahead of time. I'm trying to find questions and make sure that they overlap with some of the questions that are being asked in the Q&A. And here's a question actually that was submitted ahead of time that overlaps pretty directly with a question in the Q&A. And it is, what is your recommendation on the proposed charter amendments regarding commissions and mayoral appointment powers, and why do you take that position? Supervisor Melgar.
Thank you, Patrick. I have chosen to not take a position on either, although because I had to vote at the board on President Peskin's legislation, I voted against it. I did not want to send it to the voters. And the reason why I am not taking a position on either is that even though I think we generally have too many boards and commissions, I'm not sure that's the problem in San Francisco. We have many, many problems. And the level of contentiousness around these two measures and the sort of process issues around them are just simply not something that I want to get involved with right now.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much. And Matt, same question for you.
Yeah, I do take a position on both of them because I do think we need some reform. I mean, either of them I think are a movement in the good direction. Saying that, I do think Prop E is less so. And that's because there's an added, it's almost like a commission on commissions, and I know there's a time limit on it, but it's just another layer of bureaucracy that's coming through with no real finite sort of result or end. On the flip side, and I think something the proponents of Prop E would say about Prop D, which I do support Prop D, but one thing that does worry about me is just the hard line of, 65 commissions. The supervisor just mentioned, we are a big city. We're a world-class city, arts, all this stuff. And it might require more commissions than other cities. So I'm not so comfortable with the hard number, but what I do like is the fact that it creates a stronger mayor system. It's going to put a lot of this in the responsibility of the mayor, who's beholden to the voters. So ultimately, the voters get more power. And that is something I'm wholly for. Anything we can move in that direction where the voters have more power, makes things less contentious between the mayor and the supervisor, I'm very supportive of.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much. All right, Matt, and now it's your turn to answer the question first. I'm sure it shocks both of you that we've gone more than almost 50 minutes, more than 50 minutes, and we have not yet talked about the Great Highway. But here it comes. What is your view on the Upper Great Highway ballot measure and why? All right, Matt, I know this is something you have very few opinions about. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think, look, I am opposed to it. It's a soft oppose. I think we can have a number of solutions there that could work for the community. Really my biggest gripe personally, and I can give my no on K stump speech, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to speak to you from the heart here. This is a nice to have. It's not a necessary. And relentlessly pursuing nice to haves is what's ruined San Francisco. We just need to be focused on our basic services. We need to be focused on restoring public safety. We need to be focused on providing housing. We need to be focused on fixing the financial inefficiencies. We need to be focused on not having, massive amounts of deaths in our cities and in SROs every year due to drug overdoses. And so, the fact that we're having this big fight over something that's really not going to take San Francisco, out of the position it's in, to me is just misfounded. And it's a lot of the reasons why we're here, these nice to haves. So I rather not take money from elsewhere where we need it desperately. I rather not build a park where we have tons of open space. And we need, to be focusing on elsewhere. We need to be coming together as a community elsewhere. And closing it off to cars is already 90% of the solution. And a lot of people in District 7 or District 4 on the whole West Side feel left out of this entire process.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much. Supervisor Melgar, what is your view on the Upper Grade Highway ballot measure and why?
Thank you so much. I like nice to haves. San Francisco is nice to have, and we have consistently push the envelope on that vision of making our city a world-class city. Visitors to San Francisco and tourism are our bread and butter. That's what keeps the city going. People have come here from all over the world and all over the country to seek refuge here because it is nice to have. We have reclaimed the waterfront at the Embarcadero, at Crissy Field, at Pier 70. The West Side has been left behind in this. We have this highway going up the iconic coastline, which is the Pacific Ocean. It is an opportunity to bet on tomorrow, on leaving something great for our children, and also an amazing community economic development opportunity for the West Side to have visitors come out here to visit our iconic Pacific Ocean and have the opportunity to go to our businesses, to stop at Java for lunch, to do all of the things that we want people to do that they now do on the east side of town at the Embarcadero. It'll be a way to connect the zoo and the new park that the PUC is going to be building south of Sloat, and to create an amazing place for generations to come.
Terrific. Okay, thank you very much, Supervisor Melgar. And it's now your turn to answer a question first. And I'm going to go to a question in the live Q&A, and I just want to explain to the audience, there are several questions in the Q&A that sort of overlap with topics that we've already covered. And so I've been trying to give priority to topics we haven't covered. There is a question in the live Q&A that I think covers a completely different topic, like it's not housing, it's not MUNI, it's not public safety, it's PG&E. And so here's the question. What are the plans for San Francisco to get rid of PG&E and buy our own transmission lines? I am now forced to pay PG&E even though I have solar with battery, even though they offer a dangerous and unreliable service. They have been allowed to destroy the rooftop solar business. PG&E probably not going to tug at people's heartstrings here, but the serious question I think is what are the plans for San Francisco to get rid of PG&E? Buy our own transmission lines. Do you have a point of view on that, or more broadly on our infrastructure when it comes to power and transmission? Supervisor Melgar, please go ahead.
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you to the audience member who submitted this question. PG&E is a real impediment to progress in San Francisco. It is an impediment to our climate action goals and also our housing production goals. We have had over the last decade an active effort to buy the grid from PG&E. We made a very serious offer and it was rejected. Right now, the California Public Utilities Commission has sort of sided with them, and the federal authorities are coming up with a price that they think would be fair, that we would all be bound to if we purchase the grid from PG&E. And I hope that we have the political will to do it. because not just our present, but our future is dependent on having a utility company that meets the needs of the community of San Francisco, and PG&E so far has not.
Okay, thank you very much. Matt, same question to you.
Yeah, I actually agree with Supervisor Melgar on there. I do think we have to put PG&E up to a competitive process. I think if we can find some more control over how we can, what we can do in our own city, it's very good for San Francisco. The question mentioned solar panels. You know, the bottleneck on that, or the stranglehold on our ability to produce solar panels, is one of the biggest things stopping San Francisco from making cheap power, cheap electricity. It's also a lot cleaner than PG&E's method of doing it. So, you know, when I spoke earlier about the autonomous vehicles, I mean, those two things link up. I mean, having that progress there, being able to build a robust solar power and all the supplemental service or power that comes from that can be used to drive down the price of electricity across the city. It could be used to power a lot of these autonomous vehicles. It could be used to provide free charging across the city, and where San Francisco is going, you know, by trying to become 100% electrical cars. This is a very, very good thing. So I think, you know, thinking forward thinking, you know, we have to find a better solution. I think you know, stop the monopoly of PG&E, put them up to a competitive process, and make them work for it. And then the more control we can have and the more freedom we can give to our citizens, the better.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much, Matt. I'm going to take one more question from the live Q&A, and although this question does overlap some with housing, which we covered before, I think it does it from a different perspective, and so hopefully will be a useful topic to cover. And so the question is, what can be done to root out corruption and an unworkably complicated and expensive permit system in San Francisco? The housing stock in the district is aging, and it's hard to upgrade systems as the city permitting makes it expensive and difficult to maintain homes. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you have this big bureaucratic process, it's just going to be rife with corruption. I mean, the only people who've been able to build a lot of the housing here, I mean, I wonder how they're able to do it. I truly do. You know, a lot of them. So we need to reform the process. We need to make it as objective as possible. This is not only good for corruption, but it reduces the cost of capital. It reduces the cost of building in San Francisco. So it's really a killing two birds with one stone by reforming our planning process, reforming our DR process. And I think, you know, the more robust it is, the longer it takes, you know, the more room you have for permit expediters and all these things that, you know, are pretty wild to have, you know, in a city like San Francisco. So I do think, you know, one of the biggest sources of corruption will be DBI in the planning process, and just all the characters around that who are trying to make money building housing in the city. And I think if we can reduce how difficult it is to make housing, ultimately we're going to reduce the incentive to be corrupt and to cheat the system.
Okay, thank you very much. Supervisor Melgar, same question to you around the permitting process and perception of corruption in that process. What can be done to make it better?
Thank you, Patrick, and thank you to the audience member for that question, which I spend a lot of time working on. One of the things that is a driver of the inefficiency in our system is that it is so disjointed and siloized. So I think one of the things that we could do that would be most helpful is to merge the Department of Building Inspection with the Planning Department, and for the user perspective to have one place to go from entitlement all the way to certificate of occupancy, and to have one department in charge of making sure that whatever other department touches the process, be it Department of Public Works or Fire Department or the Department of Public Health, that it is the entitling department that's responsible for checking off that box. We do not currently have an integrated permitting system For example, the planning department database does not talk to the building inspection database. That is something that we could do, we should do. We did a little bit of reform 2 years ago at the ballot when we reformed the Department of Building Inspection and its organization, having the mayor be able to once again control the hiring and firing of the director directly, but we still have a long way to go. And like I said, the coordination and merging of the departments would be, my idea for making the whole thing more efficient.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Supervisor Melgar. This will be the last question, and it goes to you first. And if I've got this right, I believe we've equalized who's gone first in the questions. But at any rate, this is a very specific neighborhood question, and it is, what are your plans to help attract more and more diversity of businesses to the Portola Plaza? Miraloma Park families would love to have more food, small business options in the open storefronts. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for the question. I've met with neighbors there who have all kinds of ideas for what should happen at that plaza. One of the things that I'm most interested in is working with the MTA that owns the entire area in front of that plaza and collects rents and revenue from the parking meters. I think, the space is not beautiful. It is not inviting. And even though it provides, parking that's needed for the businesses, it could do a lot more. I have worked with the MTA in some of their properties in other areas in District 7. For example, at Lakeside Landing, that was an MTA parking lot that was really ugly and graffitied and full of garbage. And working with the community and some participatory budgeting funds, we have transformed it into a space that is inviting. It has become a community hub, but also has been the driver for a transformation of the commercial corridor and invited new businesses in. So I think that, we can be creative as long as we're collaborative. And I think that one of the issues with that space is that it is not inviting and could be so much more.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much. And Matt, same question to you, just to remind you, what plans would you have to help attract more and more diverse businesses to the Portola Plaza? Because the questioner says Miraloma Park families would love to have more food, small business options in the open storefronts. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think really I support as much small business as we can. I think we have to, that goes back to planning, right? I think we need to reduce the costs. I mean, so somebody can open up a small business wherever they like in those areas. That is one parking or one plaza that hasn't been touched for a long time. So I think it's on its way there. I think we just need to continue to make it easier for businesses. I mean, I really go back to the root causes. I think as long as District 7's safe, as long as it's easy to open a small business here, as long as people are coming here and shopping here, especially the residents, it's going to be vibrant and things will turn over and we'll have new stores open up. So, for me, it really goes down to the root issues. I'm not so worried about, beautification of plazas, even though Lakeside Landing does look really good, not going to lie. But, for me, again, I'd rather look at the root issues of what's going to drive to have more small businesses here open up. I think that, again, goes back to planning reform. I think that goes back again to a public safety first mindset and just making District 7 as inviting as it can be, including Portola Plaza, for small businesses, for the neighbors and for people coming through.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That's our last question. When we did the run of show ahead of time, we had talked about not having closing statements, but I think actually perhaps it might be good if each one of you would like to take a minute to close out. And so we began with Supervisor Melgar, and then we alternated the questions throughout to make it even. And so I think, Matt, if you would like to take a minute or so just to say whatever you'd like to close out, and then Supervisor Melgar, of course, you'll have a minute to do the same thing. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I'd kind of like to point out to just, what I spoke about in the beginning. The only reason I'm doing this is to have better representation here in District 7. you know, my family's putting out a lot of sacrifice, my kids, my wife, you know, for us to do this. And ultimately it's infinitely meaningful because I love the district. And, you know, so I really hope that I have the chance to serve this district. I really hope I have the chance to lead this district. I really hope I have the chance to show the district that things can be done differently than they have been for the last 5 years, for the last 12 years, and really give that promise that I'm going to deliver what the community wants, and I'm really going to work towards these citywide issues with a new board of supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Supervisor Melgar, go ahead, just a minute to close
Thank you
out.
so much, Patrick. I am running again because I want to continue to serve this community. I am a mother of 3 girls who grew up in this house and went to schools in District 7. I have a set of skills, knowledge, and experience that have been very useful to District 7. District 7 is a very diverse district. In fact, it's one of the most diverse in San Francisco. We have middle class, single family homes in the middle, and we have 3 of our most important educational institutions, San Francisco State, City College, and UCSF Parnassus, with lots of young people and students. We are ethnically diverse. We have many different languages. I will continue to prioritize the specific needs of District 7 and make sure that for the next generation and for today, we have a better Westside.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much to both you, Supervisor Melgar, and you, Matt Boschetto, for coming to speak to our club this evening. We covered a wide range of issues. It was a great discussion, great Q&A, and very, very grateful to both of you for coming. We hope that everybody in the audience found this useful and engaging. And we hope that you will come back to the Westside Family Democratic Club, where we really want to engage and to provide more information to everybody on the West Side. So thank you all, and from the Westside Family Democratic Club, good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Very
Thank you, Patrick.
professional.
Oh, thank you very
you.
much. Thank you very much both for coming. Thank you.
Bye.